Hello, my name is Kendrick James, and I'm a professional barber. Well, Impressive Cuts is it's a barber shop, but we tend to lean more toward, well, I wouldn't say lean towards a particular demographic of people, but basically what we try to offer is a high-end service that will cater to, I guess, persons who are more of a working class kind of business-minded persons, but again, not excluding a particular demographic of people. So we kind of want to keep that balance. Well, believe it or not, a few years ago when NIB, in an attempt to get self-employed persons to become regulated, they wanted us to sort of register under NIB as such. So I went there to register, but I didn't have a name. I didn't know that I needed a trading name. So the agent who was actually dealing with me was a young lady. So I asked her, like, what's the name for a barbershop? And she said, Impressive Cuts. And I said, well, impressive. So that's how Impressive Cuts got started. On paper, actually. Well, I've been a barber professionally cutting in barbershops for about 17 years, but I've been flirting with this now for about 30 years. The other day I was home, I got a young neighbor and he was like, boy, Ken, you remember when you used to cut our hair in the back of the yard? Yeah, so I used to actually, when I first started cutting, I had to pay them to let me cut their hair. Because I used to gap them up and, so they were like my little experiment dummies, So yeah, I basically been doing this now for at least about over 30 years, but professionally I'll say about 20 years, professionally. Well, my inspiration for wanting to start Impressive Cuts is not one in particular. When I started out as a barber, like, I don't know, but most people, like, it was not my intention to actually become a barber. So this is something that you sort of morph into. So as I started working in the field and I started really like getting vested into barbering and meeting like a broad range of people and having these conversations and people like, you should probably take it seriously. It was at this time that I started to really like change my mindset about barbering. Like, probably perhaps this is something that you can make a career. And like I say, meeting like a broad range of people, they encouraged me, and as they began to encourage me, I basically started to take it to another level. So as that began to evolve to another level, then the business aspect of it started to evolve also. So this is where the whole idea of Impressive Cuts being birthed in my mind as like, okay, perhaps a different level of service and, watching the industry, watching trends. How is it that you can evolve to basically suit this particular market at this particular time? So more of the business aspect began to come as I begin to become more experienced in the field. That part of it began to like open up itself much more to me. But that's the life of a barber. So I guess you could say this. Well, the industry is not the core of barbering. That doesn't change. Barbershop is like, in essence, it's a man's cave. Well, it's become more, we have a lot of women coming more and getting cuts now than they would have done 20 years ago. But barbershops have traditionally been a place where men come, not just to get their haircuts, but we talk about social things that's happening, we talk about politics, we talk about sex, we talk sports. So it's always been a place where men can come and sort of like be free and be themselves. So that aspect of barbering has not changed, and I think it probably never will. But in terms of us evolving and moving in time, the technology aspect of it has changed. So like tools and equipments and designs and different stuff like that, like you would see those things begin to change. particularly like haircuts, like guys who are much younger, they'd go for more younger trends. Like, they have these different haircuts that they would get far apart from what their fathers will. So you kind of get that kind of the generational gap in there in terms of the way they get their haircut, but the core of a barbershop, that never changes. That always remains the same. It's a manscape. This is where we come and, this is where we discuss the real thing, Like, you have the kids, some would grow the afro, but they would get like a temple fade, so they'd kind of taper the side. So it's basically the same with just a little different flair of probably how they do it, So it kind of comes and it goes. Like, you'd have some young kids, they prefer like just like what we'd call like a Caesar, right? So it's just basically a low cut. They keep it dark, but they want to kind of keep the shape up really, really sharp. Or if they do go with that old kind of 1970s kind of like shaft, kind of with a big afro, that kind of stuff, like they probably just would taper the sides or probably get it sponge and sort of nap up. But it's basically the same, but just with a different flavor, Well, I've given the opportunity, particularly in the Bahamas, I think the industry can be better regulated. We have a lot of barbers that are not, they're not where they need to be, and that's in terms of just, not just the ability to cut here, but in terms of just being regulated, having license and having to be able to go to BTVI and become certified. So that's really, really important to the industry, because we don't want persons to be opening up barbershops and just cutting hair, right? Because it's kind of sensitive. You kind of need to know how to sanitize your tools. You need to know how to keep your environment clean, because you're catering to the public. So I think from a government's perspective, there needs to be a little bit more regulating in terms of that. And I think that even opens up an avenue for government to collect revenue, in terms of course, you're going to have to have your business licenses, which is going to have to be renewed on an annual basis. We're talking about persons coming in wanting to be or to become a barber based on the way the industry is evolving. So I think it's a win-win situation, but yeah, definitely in the Bahamas there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done to the barbering industry. We have a few associations, but again, the thing is getting them regulated, getting it recognized first and foremost by the government, and then having barbers actually working within the association to have barbers regulated, and not just regulated, but to keep the continuous education of the industry, so you can keep up to trends in terms of tools and haircuts, and like, of course, like I say, it's sanitizing, and you have to, that's really, really important, because when you're dealing with the public at large, you want to basically protect the consumer. So that is definitely an area that we need to hone in on and focus on. Yeah, so what you have now, of course, with the global pandemic, with this coronavirus, you know that we can't have a crowded barbershop like what we were basically accustomed to. So what I have done is I have a Facebook page. So we have persons that are able to go online, and you can book an appointment. So you book an appointment to avoid the overcrowding of barbershops, where you can have persons kind of rotating in and out without having to have a shop where we are basically violating the protocols of the coronavirus pandemic. So it's basically that, and we have something where we allow persons, instead of us handling cash, we allow like direct deposits online, basically, so we can kind of avoid all that kind of thing. So I mean, the coronavirus within itself, based on its protocols, has allowed us to operate. Well, we kind of had to learn, right? Because it kind of came really quick, so we had to kind of adapt really quickly. But I think the adoption has been really good in terms of, okay, here it is, you have to find new ways now to kind of deal with your clientele and to deal with your business, So, well, it's been kind of, people, like, the adoption of it is kind of, it takes people a while before we adapt, but this has been going on a year now, so we find persons now, they would, book their appointments, your persons who would prefer to pay online, as opposed to using cash. So basically, it's not so much of an ingenuity of me remodeling Impressive Cuts, but the pandemic itself creating that space for us to have to change, to be able to. Yeah, so I was in an airport about a year ago, upstate, getting ready to travel back home, and I was purchasing something out of a store. So I saw the yuck out my cash, and the young lady looked at me like, cash? Like, it was almost like the first time she's ever seen cash. So she was like, no, we don't use cash. So you just kind of like use your card. And I felt a bit embarrassed. So I was like, you know what, when I go home, I'm going to, because I'm kind of like in that era where I wasn't so much a part of Generation Z, right? So without really kind of revealing my age, I kind of came a generation kind of, ahead of them. So like the whole thing personally for me. So I wasn't all that kind of tech savvy, but that moment basically made me like, boy, Ken, you know what? You need to get yourself together. You need to get with this tech and get with these platforms to see exactly what is it, how you can, kind of personally evolve, right? So with that, when I came back home, I went to my local bank, right? One of them, which is Scotia, and I made it a point to kind of like get my online banking, so I was able to like pay my bills and kind of, get familiar with how these things are used and different things like that. So having done that, most of my clients, I started to tell them, man, come on, man, like pay me online. So I started to, act like, but I've been doing this thing for a long time, So they were like, yeah, man. So a lot of persons were really opting to kind of like pay online. And then, of course, like with all the digital platforms coming now to stream, and, the world is moving forward, right? So just like every other industry, right, the barbering is going to have to evolve. So like I said, the core of barbering as being the man cave, that may be hard to replace, but the technology, everything else around it needs to be changed. So now I'm in talks now with someone from the central bank to see if I could kind of adopt Sand Dollar to get that in here, so that could be used as a form of payment. And even as we begin to move on, other forms of digital payments, cryptocurrencies or whatever. So we just have to kind of keep up to date in terms of that area, so we can kind of be able to move as the world moves. So we're taking a very old profession in barbering and trying to make sure marry it with this thing that's going on, technology that's moving, and I'm talking with lightning speed, so it's kind of difficult to keep up. So we just want to kind of keep that hand in hand where we can kind of move forward with the way things are going and in the direction it's going. Oh, well, like I say, where I see it now is there's so much work to be done. There's so much work to be done. And sometimes we speak about things and we talk about it like in this sort of utopian mindset, but everything is going to take work, right? So it's work. So this is what we have to do. We have to actually work. We have to work to see the change that we would want to see. And like I said, government, first and foremost, has to become serious with regulating this industry. This industry needs to be regulated. We don't need everybody to just be going and grabbing a hole in the wall and putting people in chairs and saying that they're cutting people, right? So we basically need to get that. Government need to basically hone in on that. We, as barbers, our association needs to become stronger. We need to get and hit the ground. We need to find every barber. We need to work along with BTVI. So when young barbers come out of this program, that they're able to kind of come right into the workforce, and not just come into the workforce, but to know the industry and to learn it as they become more involved with it. So it's a whole lot of work to be done. It's just a lot. Like I say, you just have to hit the ground, and like I say, not just talking in some grand one, getting on the ground and just working. This is what it's going to take. No politics, no fancy words. Just hit the ground and let's let's get it started, you know? Come on in. Like I said, when I first started barbering, most barbers, I had my best friend, he started just cutting in the back of his yard, right? So we started just fooling around, playing with it. And as I got out of school, I applied one or two places, the hotels. I had an interview at the prison to become a prison officer, even to become a police officer. But, you know, I was never called, but I started working in a barber shop. And when I started, I was like, okay, I'll just work as a barber until I can find something else to do, right? And, you know, it's amazing how over the years, it sort of came real to me, like, hey, this is not just a job. This is not just something to do until you're able to get yourself in a different sector. But this within itself is a career. So we've had senior barbers before us, like Mr. Johnson, God rest his soul, Cliffy. So these were senior men who actually made a career out of barbering. And I'm talking, did well, did extremely well. So here it is now, I'm a man. I have my 2 kids, I'm able to take care of my family. Being a barber. So it wasn't until years later that I realized, like, hey, this is your career. You don't have to wait to get another job. This is your job. This is what you do. You're a barber. So it wasn't until this realization that I started to begin to take this thing really serious. And I'm telling you, the potential in terms of being able to make a living, it is tremendous. I mean, of course, I wouldn't say what it is that I do here, but it's incredible, you know. But it's like anything else, you know. It's what you put in, it's what you're going to get out, you know. So how hard you're willing to work, how hard you're willing to hit the ground, or how early you're willing to get up and to come in, to be a professional, to be here when people call you, to be able to give them this service, right? So it's all about service, and Impessive Cuts is about service. And like I said in the beginning, this isn't even a name that I came up with. Somebody else did it. And then she said it, I was like, you know, impressive. So I need to be just that impressive, you know, in deed and in word, you know, but more so in deed. But yeah, it's incredible. Like anyone I will advise, and I have a program now that I started, it's called Barber Alliance. So what is it that I do? I go around to the various schools, young men, and everybody's not going to be academically inclined, right? So C.I. Gibson had this program with this lovely lady named Mr. Barros, right? She taught barber, lovely lady. So she invited me there, and I went and I spoke to the class that was doing barbering. And I started to encourage them. I was like, listen, man, everybody ain't gonna be a lawyer. Everybody ain't gonna be a doctor. Right? You find your vocation, you find what it is that you're good at, and you just be the best at that. And I encourage them to come into the field, go to BTVI, get your certification, and come on right in. And right now in Impessive Cuts, I have one of those young guys who I actually spoke with in that field. Came right out of school into the industry, barbering. So this is one person that government now don't often to find a job for, or to make the civil service, you know, it's already huge. So this is one person that doesn't have to be added onto that list. You understand? So yeah, man, anyone, just come on in. You know, it's rewarding. Barbering is this is a profession. This is a very old profession, and it's a very serious profession. And like I said, you don't have to. You know, I had to learn, like, stop looking outside of yourself for salvation. Here it is, I had a craft that I was working in a field and looking other places to be employed. And as I look back at it now, like the money I would have made, you know, doing these other employments is nothing compared to what I can make now as a barber. And like I said, it's not about being money driven, but it's about being career driven and looking at this as something that, hey, you know, this is something that I can basically take serious. I can take care of my family, and you could also impact your country from a larger perspective, you know. So for me, it's been very rewarding. It's been something that I have, you know, like I said, you know, the more time that passes on, and I look at it now, it's amazing. It's amazing, and I am so happy that it sort of went this way as opposed to going the other way, because like I said, I if I could do it all over again a million times, I would take the same path. So yeah, just come on in, take it seriously, and just do your thing. Just work hard. What you put in is what you're going to get out. Like I said, it's unprecedented what we're facing in this coronavirus. It's not just exclusive to us. The whole world is experiencing this. So I just want to tell people, just be strong. Be strong, be courageous, be encouraged. We're going to get through this one day at a time. You can't live your life a week ahead or even a minute ahead. You just have to live it in the moment and, try to make as wise of a decision as you can. Be as frugal with your money and, just hold on. Things are going to get better. So everyone that's watching this, let's be encouraged, man. Let's just hold on and be strong, because change is going to come.